right now the transfer window hasn't really been good for Arsenal. I mean, between Douglas Luiz, who was an apparent transfer target for us, looking destined to join Juventus, Šeško, who I thought would be a perfect fit for this team, decided to extend his contract at RB Leipzig and not join Arsenal this summer. A report also claims that Arsenal will not be pursuing Amadou Onana, which I hope is a very false report. Isak looks destined to stay at Newcastle, and no talk has happened between Newcastle and Arsenal over Bruno Guimaraes. There really isn't that much to be excited about as far as our transfer business goes so far. Now, I know the window hasn't even opened yet, and any big transfers will most likely take place only in July after the Euros and Copa America, but it's still not looking really good. But in today's video, I wanted to focus on a potential attacker that Arsenal have been linked to, have shown interest in, and I think might be a good fit in this team, but maybe not. I want to kind of assess him in this video with you guys. And that player being Iñaki Williams' little brother, who is 21, almost 22 years old now, is Nico Williams of Athletic Bilbao. So what's going on, everyone? You are listening to Gunner Central here. I hope you're all doing well. Please be sure to like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get into it. Now, in a countless amount of videos, I always mentioned that in the attacking department, we have some holes to fix up. We need a backup for Saka desperately at the right wing position, and we need a striker. Now, whether that striker should be a world-class striker or just a backup, that remains to be seen. I am kind of leaning towards the backup, because one thing I like about Šeško is that outside of his physical tools, he wasn't quite ready to be a starter game in and game out, and at 21 years old, there was time to develop him, and also his rumored price tag of £45 million was actually really cheap, all things considered. You consider his height, his speed, his potential, all of that. Of course, we're not getting Šeško now, but that's why I really like the idea of signing Šeško. I think Havertz should be our starting striker for the season coming up, and I think a good backup like a Šeško would have been a perfect replacement to have Šeško and Jesus to be backups for Havertz. I thought that would have been perfect. Obviously, we're not going to be getting Šeško, but with Nico Williams, he is pretty much the same in my eyes. Now, he isn't a striker. He's a really talented winger, able to play on both wings, which is awesome for depth, but he does still have tons of room for improvement, and he isn't quite ready to be a starter game in and game out ahead of the likes of Martinelli, Saka, and even Trossard. And as far as price tag goes, well, he has a £42.1 million release clause that Arsenal could activate anytime this summer. That is a really good price tag, I think, all things considered, like with Šeško. And the fact that we can just activate a release clause, it allows us to not have to worry all that much about a bidding war like what might have happened with Šeško. And my whole thing is that we need a world-class midfielder to join Declan and Martin Ødegaard, and then the rest of the money that we do have after we sell some players should be spread across the rest of the team, say a backup goalkeeper, maybe someone in defense, definitely a right winger, maybe someone up top as well. I think most of our transfer budget should be put into a world-class CDM or central midfielder, depends where you want to be playing Declan Rice. And paying £42 million for a player of Nico's quality and potential, I think would be a really awesome move from Arsenal. Now, the issue is that Nico can't play down the middle, or at least he hasn't proven it yet. So if we are going to buy Nico Williams, he would be a winger that can play on the left and right hand side, so he'd be a good backup for Saka. He'd add depth to our wide areas, but he doesn't play down the middle. But either way, he still does fill a potential of need. Now, Nico Williams is coming off a season where he scored 8 goals and got 17 assists in 37 games for Bilbao. Now, I know a lot of people will see the 8 goals and get turned off immediately of Nico Williams, but those 17 assists in 37 games for a 21-year-old winger is really, really impressive. He still does need a lot of improvements, of course, to his whole game, but that is actually really good numbers for someone you would expect to see come off the bench for us for large portions of the season. Remember, if we get Nico Williams, he's not going to be a starter. So 8 goals and 17 assists in 37 games for a 21-year-old winger as a backup for Arsenal would be elite numbers. Again, he is only 21, turning 22 in July, so he is still young, and he could add much needed depth to our wide areas, maybe even allowing someone like Leandro Trossard to play down the middle more if needed. So if we bring in Nico Williams, you could say that we now have a backup striker in Leandro Trossard, because Trossard has played striker throughout the season and he looked pretty decent as striker. Nico Williams is very, very quick, really good at dribbling. He's a talented passer, of course, and overall just a really good winger, especially for his age. He would be a really high level backup if we were to bring him in. His overall work rate defensively, but all of which of those could be improved with some really good coaching that Arteta and his staff definitely have and have proven to be good at. So overall, is Nico Williams the guy that Arsenal should go in for in the attacking department? If we get Nico Williams, do we still need a striker? If we get Nico Williams, does that quite torn? Yes, he's a very good player for his age. He has some really good qualities about him. He helps a lot as a backup for Saka, but he isn't extremely young. He's young, but he's not in his teens. So for the amount of work we'll have to put into him, it may be a tad bit risky considering that he's almost the same age as Saka already, and his lack of extreme consistency is a tad bit worrying. Also, £42 million, while a decent price tag for how good he is, it isn't amazingly cheap. It's just not. Listen, I would most definitely take him on this team. If we were to get him, I'm not going to say, why are we getting Nico Williams? I can see why we would get him. Again, really good playmaker, really good dribbler, really quick, and he's still young enough to learn a lot for his game. There's a lot that he could bring to the team, and he would have a really good environment for him to improve, learning from the likes of Saka, Martinelli, Trossard, with Arteta as your manager in a winning team. It's a really good environment to learn. But again, £42 million just maybe a tad bit too expensive for a backup winger, and also how much we would spend on a world-class CDM, say around £60 to £80 million. It may be a tad bit too expensive. I know we need a backup for Saka, I know it, but £42 million for a player that will start every once in a while, and there's still tons of other talented wingers around the market for cheaper, and tons of talented wingers even from our academy. I don't know if Nico Williams is the perfect candidate for Arsenal. I don't think we should go balls to the wall and go get Nico Williams. If he falls in our lap, if we have £42 million to spend on a backup, well then sure, I would take it. Listen, I trust Arteta, so if we were to bring in Nico Williams again, I'll do nothing but support him. I just maybe think that there are better candidates out there, either from our academy or around Europe.